Hi, I'm Maureen Brennan. I'm a technical advisor for the Federal and State Grants Unit here at the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. This is one of a series of very brief webinars that we're posting alongside the R3 NOFO to help give you an idea of some of the grant process, should you be approved for an R3 award, and to help you develop better applications that take into account some of these processes that we're going to be reviewing here. So in this session, we're going to talk about pre-approvals and document retention. Okay, let's review some of the items that will need pre-approval. So even after you're awarded a grant, we've negotiated your grant agreement, we've executed the grant, and your program has started, there are still a number of items that may need additional approval before those costs can be incurred or that activity undertaken. For each of these steps, I'm not going to give you a lot of detail on the process for these approvals, but basically your grant specialist will guide you through each of the approval processes and the necessary paperwork to get those approvals. Here are the items that are definitely going to need authority prior approval. Even if they appear in your program narrative, if they appear in your budget, you're going to need additional approvals, explicit approvals, before you can undertake these activities. Let's go through each one of them. For subcontracts, any subcontract that you're entering into, the authority requires that you submit it before it's been executed. So the intent behind that approval is just to assure that your contract procurements are competitive and that those contracts include all of the provisions that are required. For budget revisions, any significant changes in your budget that was approved does need explicit authority approval. So if you have five items, you're going to purchase 5 laptops through your program, and you find out along the way that you actually need 7. Before you buy those other 2 laptops, you do have to request a budget revision because those are new items that were not in your budget. So your grant specialist will walk you through the process of getting that budget revision. You're going to do some paperwork that details the requested changes and explains the reason why those changes are necessary for the program. The grant specialist is going to be asking why you need 2 additional laptops, and you're going to need to justify that in order to have your budget revised to give you permission to purchase them. Another thing we're going to be looking at is if those new costs are allowable. So again, we're going to harken back to the 2 CFR federal cost principles to make sure that any changes in your budget would actually conform to 2 CFR 200. A lot of times people get confused between budgets and amendments to the agreement. A budget is just changing the actual budget. It's not changing any term of the agreement. An amendment is the document that's needed to actually change any term. So if you are going to, if the period of performance is going to be extended, or if the dollar value of the agreement is going to change, if the goals, objectives, and performance measures that were outlined in your original agreement are going to change, those would be amendments to an actual term of the agreement. And so we will need to do an amendment. And an amendment process is a lot longer process than is a budget revision. Budget revisions are approved by your grant specialist and by their manager. An amendment needs to go to minimally to our legal department for their review and approval, and it may need to go to our fiscal department as well. And it will need to be signed off by all of your the grantee agencies, authorized signers, as well as our executive director. So there are a lot more hands involved in this process, levels of approvals involved in that process. So it's a longer process. You're also going to need prior approval from the authority for any out-of-state travel. And this is one that sometimes confuses grantees. So even if you've identified in your signed agreement that you're going to go to a specific conference that's out of state and you've detailed those costs in your budget and justified those costs in your budget, you're still going to need to send a letter that details those costs and justifies that travel as being necessary for the program. So if you do have travel out of state built into your program, be sure to set a reminder for yourself before you incur any of those costs, and make sure that you have the authority documentation of that approval. Finally, we get to publications. So any publications that are issued about your funded program need to have authority legal review and approval. So this applies to publications, announcements, reports, flyers, brochures, and any other written material. Public announcements or press releases concerning grant activity or funding require prior notice to the authority. And again, you can get more detail on that process from your grant specialist once you have a signed agreement. And just a brief note on maintaining documents. So our policies indicate that our grantees shall maintain for 3 years from the date of submission of the final expenditure report all adequate books, financial records, supporting documents, statistical records, and all other records pertinent to that award. So that's 3 years after you submit your final PFR. So after the program period of performance is over and you've submitted your final PFR for your grant, you still need to maintain all of these documents regarding this grant for 3 years. We mentioned maintaining your documents because there are a number of reasons we may be coming back to you for these documents. So we may need them for site visits. You may need them if you're being audited either by the authority or by your own internal auditor. They may be needed for program evaluation after the period of performance is over, and we may need them for freedom of information or FOIA requests. We get a lot of FOIA requests regarding the grants that we administer, and so you need to be able to provide those documents as much as 3 years after the close of the program. So that's a quick look at some of those issues of the maintaining documents and the prior approvals, so you can be aware and think that through when you're submitting your application. Here's the full list of the R3 NOFO recordings that we're making available with the NOFO. If you have any questions about the content of this recording or about the NOFO, I encourage you to submit your questions through the NOFO Q&A and to visit the NOFO website on a regular basis. We do post all of those questions and answers on the website every week. Thanks for joining me.